And I guess we may need to call the roll if we're,
Yes.
Let's just call a meeting to order and call the roll. We'll be ready.
going to call this meeting to order of the TIF Commission. And we'll call the roll.
Okay. We're getting ready to call the roll. So if you're on mute, would you unmute yourselves? Thank you. So Chair Newberger,
Here.
Commissioner Claiborne. Here. Commissioner Owens,
Present.
Commissioner Smart. Not present. Commissioner Powderly.
Here.
Commissioner Hughes,
Present.
Commissioner Arkles is not present. So you have a quorum with one, two. I called him. Did I call you? David, I called you already, right?
Yes, ma'am.
One, two, you have a quorum with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 present and 2 absent.
I am here as well.
Who is Patrick? Oh, I'm sorry, Marion. Commissioner G.
No
So
worries.
we have 8 present and 2 absent.
One S.
Good. You-
Okay, it's okay. 1, 2, 3.
So thank you all very much for being here today. And one of the things we wanted to do was to familiarize the board members with information about TIF and the TIF Commission and its operations, being that it's been a while since we've actually gone through a full TIF. And so before we have any new TIFs presented to the board, I thought it would be a good time to go through our process and allow questions to be answered, asked and answered during this process, and to get a full understanding of how the process works. And so I'm going to turn it to Zach, who is the department head that leads this, and then we will have several presentations and discussions here.
Good Sorry about this. Good afternoon. Good morning. I'm sick. Thank you for all. There you go.
Excuse me, Zach. Chair Newberger,
Yeah,
we need to do the minutes,
yes.
please.
Okay.
Thank you.
You-
So the minutes have been presented to us, and it's in our packet today, and I'm going to move their adoption. Is there a second?
I second. Cleveland.
Okay. Any comments? We'll take a vote.
Chair Newberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Claiborne,
Yes.
Commissioner Owens,
Yes.
Commissioner Powderly,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
and Commissioner Marion. Commissioner Gee,
Yes.
motion passes with all voting yes.
Thank you. And then it's your turn.
Thank you. Zach Wilson, the head of the incentives department here at SLDC. Again, I would like to thank you for all being here this morning. We do really appreciate your time and service to the TIF Commission. The last time we had a full new TIF come in front of your commission was back in 2021. So we like to do a little refresher, not just for the TIF Commission, but for the staff and the public. We'll have 4 speakers today. Mark Spikerman from our outside counsel, Gilmore and Bell, David Meyer, internal counsel on TIF matters, Myellen Swanstrom from our compliance department here in our incentives department, and myself. I would like to first introduce you to Mark Spikerman from Gilmore and Bell to do a PowerPoint. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Mark Spikerman. I'm with Gilmore and Bell. And I apologize. I have to put my PowerPoint presentation on Zoom. So it's shared with everyone. Thank you. Again, my name is Mark Spikerman. I'm with Gilmore and Bell. I've worked with SLDC as outside counsel for a number of years on TIF and other incentive projects. And Otis and Zach asked that I give a overview of sort of the purpose and role of the TIF Commission, how it relates to how the city views and considers TIF projects. I've given this presentation a couple times over the years, and every time we update it a little bit. So before we really get into the TIF Commission's specific role and purpose, it's important to understand the background of why there is TIF, why this commission exists. So we'll talk a little bit about just some basic legal parameters, how TIF itself works, and then get into a little bit more detail about the role of the TIF Commission. So first of all, Municipal Law 101. As a city, as a political subdivision, the city only has the powers that are in the Constitution, a statute, or the city charter. It can't just make things up. City is a charter city, so actually it has a lot of powers, but it's limited in a way by what's available under the Constitution, statute, and charter. Constitutional Law 101. Despite what the charter or statute might say, Missouri Constitution is clear. You cannot use public money or credit for the purpose of aiding a private entity. So how does that jive with what we're here today for? It is perfectly legal, perfectly constitutional that private benefit occurs incidentally as long as the government is pursuing a public purpose. So when we talk about public purposes for TIF, what are we talking about? The main one, blight remediation. There's other public benefits too. Sometimes projects involve significant public infrastructure improvements. Often, almost always, they involve the widening or the benefit of the public tax base so that upon expiration of a TIF, the public and the other taxing districts should receive significant improved revenues. And TIF is only one type of incentive. And so these next few slides are going to kind of describe what's not TIF so that you're not confused with TIF versus tax abatement versus tax addition. The three main categories. So tax addition, not TIF. Tax addition is simply adding an additional tax and using those tax revenues for a public purpose associated with a specific project. Often these are district-wide special taxing districts like a CID or TDD. They're used to fund specific public infrastructure improvements. Or there's some, with respect to CIDs, we often see them used in business districts. We got a picture here of the Grove. The Grove has a CID. It funds not only streetscape, but I think it does some marketing and security enhancements as well.
Does the tax addition require a vote of the people?
The tax addition requires a vote within the district itself.
So let me ask you something. We do a TIF in conjunction with like a TDD, and there's one owner of the building. Is there actually an election held, and does he cast a ballot at a specific time?
Yeah, there is, and there is technically an election. If there are any registered voters, that voter votes. Often in the case you're referring to, there's not a registered voter because it's just a commercial property, and in which case the property owners vote. With respect to a TDD, often that vote is done by the property owner filing a unanimous petition saying, this is how I vote. As you did mention, though, lots of times we do see these type of incentives layered on top of a TIF. It can provide additional revenue for a redevelopment project. And there's a few acronyms in here you may not be quite as familiar with. CIDs are community improvement districts. We see those a lot. TDDs are transportation development districts. We see those a lot. PIDs are port improvement districts. It's a district that can be created by the Port Authority. It operates similar to a CID and TDD, can impose a sales tax. Then we have NID. NID is a neighborhood improvement district. That is a special assessment district. I don't think the city has done any of those. If they have, it's been probably decades since they've used it. And then PACE is a way of using special assessment financing for renewable and clean energy improvements on private property. Tax abatement is also not TIF. Tax abatement is simply whatever the tax bill is, we're reducing it. Often, we have several tax abatement tools under the Missouri statute. Many of them require a blight finding. That blight finding is not made by you, it's made by other entities based on the tool. The ones the city uses most often are the LCRA, the Land Clearance Redevelopment Authority, Chapter 353, which is the Urban Redevelopment Corporation statute, and the Enhanced Enterprise Zone. Also available is PIEA, Planned Industrial Expansion Authority, operates very similar to the LCRA. And then without a blight finding, we can do transactions under Chapter 100 of the Missouri statutes or with the Port Authority, in which a tax exempt entity literally takes title to the property, making it tax exempt, and then we lease it back to a private company. Those are more rare, but we do see those type of transactions more often in corporate and job attraction, job retention projects. The picture on the slide is the P&G facility up on the North Riverfront that utilized a Port Authority transaction for abatement.
Clear up for me. Oftentimes we do TIFs and it seems to me there's some kind of tax that's reduced or not charged on like building materials. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So the LCRA, the port, the city, the PIEA, they can all do transactions in which they take an interest in the project during the construction period and basically allow the use of their own tax exempt status for the developer or the company to purchase construction materials for the project without paying sales tax.
Okay.
And that is typically, we've collected some data points. The vast majority of the sales taxes that are avoided on those transactions would have been sales taxes that would have occurred outside the city of St. Louis anyway. Building materials would have been built, bought at a lumber yard in Jefferson County or a steel yard somewhere else. And then tax redirection. This is what TIF is. This is at its utmost basic explanation. TIF is simply taking taxes that are generated from the property and redirecting them into a fund to be used to pay or reimburse redevelopment project costs associated with the improvement of that property. Picture here is Spire's headquarters. If you're not aware, that used to be the General American Insurance Building. It's sat vacant for a number of years. Spire eventually purchased it, rehabbed it, moved in all their employees. Those employees generate earnings tax, which is TIF eligible, and the property tax on that property went up significantly, generating a lot of TIF revenues. And then the redirection of those revenues reimburse Spire for a portion of the costs of rehabbing the building. So before we go into too much detail, we can talk a little about just some basic vocab lessons here. TIF Commission, that's you guys. The City of St. Louis TIF Commission is made up of representatives appointed by the City of St. Louis Public Schools, and then the other taxing districts within the city, library, MSD, they collectively get to appoint one individual per TIF commission. And technically there's a separate TIF commission for each project that the commission reviews. The city's folks stay on all along. The school district's folks stay on all of them, and then the taxing district representative will rotate between those other taxing districts. The redevelopment plan is a document, usually about 20, 30 pages long, that describes the specific redevelopment project that's proposed, gives the basis for certain findings under the TIF Act, including blight or its cousin in conservation area. The redevelopment area is the lines on a map in which TIF will occur in. The redevelopment project is the physical program of redevelopment within that area. Are we rehabbing the Gen M building? Are we doing a bunch of streetscape to promote smaller uses? Redevelopment project area, or RPA, is sort of a sub-phase of a TIF. We see these often in larger district-wide TIFs. For those of you who've been on the TIF commission, when a Cortex project has come up, they have 11 different RPAs. The Foundry has, I believe, 3 RPAs currently. TIF revenues, well, call them pilots and EATs for our shorthand. Pilots are simply the incremental real property taxes. That's the growth in property taxes because we improved a property. EATs are incremental economic activity taxes. Those are the sales, earnings, utility taxes, taxes generated from economic activities that occurred because of this redevelopment project. So how does that all come together? So we mentioned we have a base year value, a pre-redevelopment value on those taxes, and we have a post-redevelopment value on those taxes. Ideally, the post value is significantly higher than the pre-value. That creates an incremental tax stream that can be redirected to pay those redevelopment project costs. Important to TIF is a couple of statutorily required findings. One is blight. The area has to be a blighted area or a conservation area or an economic development area. Almost all TIFs in the state are either blight or a conservation area. Most areas do not entertain an economic development area finding. The conservation area, without quoting the statute completely, is basically an area that's not yet blighted but would be on its way to blight if something were not addressed immediately. And then the but-for finding, also very important because it goes back to the lessons at the beginning of the slideshow about Constitutional Law 102. You've got to have a public benefit. If this project were to occur without any TIF and you wanted to give TIF, you don't really have a public benefit at that point because you're not paying for anything public. It's a benefit that would already occur. But for simply means that it would not occur but for TIF. And by making by the public making an investment in the project, you're getting public benefits, you're getting the blight remediation, you're getting the job creation or infrastructure, widening the tax base, and it's an investment in that's the primary purpose of the public investment.
And so it looks to me like that's kind of the definition of the but for.
Yeah.
Whose burden is it to determine that? Is it this TIF commission? Is it the city? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and there are several documents that get prepared in connection with a TIF. One of them is a cost benefit analysis that requires significant information from the developer regarding finances. Additionally, SLDC, as part of its application process, receives additional information. We can take a look, and Madeline, I don't know if you're going to get into this more in yeah.
Not so much.
Okay. Well, there are ultimately it's a finding that the TIF Commission and the Board of Aldermen make, but for backup, for yeah, that documentation, you'll see SLDC staff report on, for instance, rate of returns. If they could look at a project and say, without TIF, this was going to be a home run, then it wouldn't satisfy the but-for test. Instead, most of the projects you'll see that are presented to the TIF Commission will say, like, this project could not support this level of investment without TIF because the rents, the revenues generated from it just wouldn't be sufficient on a market level to support that project.
And on that note, Mark, can you further explain, because sometimes I use a slide that basically shows the cost to construct in the city and the region is nearly the same, but the rents that can be garnered are different and throughout the region. And downtown does not enjoy the same return that we get, say, in Clayton or Chesterfield or some other parts of the city, of the region. And so that delta is really one of the components of that analysis.
That's right. I mean, between Clayton and downtown, you might see office rents that are $10 to $15 more a square foot in Clayton than downtown. And that would be a significant revenue boost for whoever is owning and leasing that office property. that just wouldn't be there downtown. Another important thing is when we talk about TIF, you'll see in the redevelopment plan, it'll say, hey, this TIF is a $10 million TIF. This is a $5 million TIF. That does not mean there's a $5 million check cut to the developer on day one. This is an incentive that's based on proving it. It's the actual tax revenue, the actual increase in tax revenues have to be created before they can be redirected.
So they're paid, and walk me through this. So they're paid back to the developer over time.
Right.
But I often hear this concept of TIF notes.
Yeah. So the TIF note, there's three ways a TIF reimbursement is structured. One is a pay as you go. Simply TIF revenues come in, we pay them over. Now you have to have documented reimbursement costs and make sure everything's, in compliance with all the agreements and documents, but that's the basics. The TIF note is an IOU, a promissory note that says, hey, we promised you $5 million of TIF. We're going to give you this note that says it's $5 million. You can pledge it to your bank as security for a construction loan. And as the TIF revenues come in, we're going to reimburse, or we're going to pay principal and interest on those notes. Those notes are what we refer to as special limited obligations, payable only from TIF revenues to the extent they're actually generated.
And the city does not guarantee those.
The city does not guarantee those.
If the TIF revenue doesn't materialize,
Yep.
no one can come back and claim, I've got a TIF note, pay me. Okay.
That's correct. And then on either very, very unique projects or very successful mature projects, there's the opportunity in which third-party investors might be interested in owning that TIF note or TIF bond and getting that revenue stream. So we've seen that, like Ballpark Village is like the big one. In those cases, publicly underwritten TIF bond issue. Cortex has done TIF bonds as well, but there's a mature revenue stream. And it can go and pay off those bonds. Developer at that point.
Sells the note. City sells the note, or the developer sells the note to a private party?
When it is just a note issuance between city and developer, it's just city and developer. It's spelled out in the redevelopment agreement, the terms of that note.
The third.
Oh, the TIF bond
Yeah.
issue. Generally in those cases, like Ballpark Village was a very collaborative process, city, developer, working to create the capital stack for the project, all at the same time. And they brought in a bond underwriter to assist in that matter.
And Mark, can you go into greater detail about those type of projects that need to be stronger, like the Ballpark Villages and Cortexes? Not all projects have that luxury.
Yeah. I mean, this is particularly if you're talking about a single site project. There would be a risk to a third party investor that single site doesn't work out, in which case they would not get their money back. Typically when you're talking about smaller projects, single site projects, that's a risk that the bond market, those third party investors are not willing to assume. You go to a Cortex or a Ballpark Village, all of a sudden you've got a critical mass of economic activity occurring. If one thing goes dark, there's probably other things that will keep the revenue stream going, and bondholders would be comfortable about investing in the project. Those single sites, like keeping it at the developer risk level, keeping it at the developer's lender's risk level, that's why the notes are there.
So the bonding, is that usually for the whole TIF area, or is it, I think about Cortex and there are all these different businesses that have come in there.
Yeah, in Cortex, they've got a mixture of TIF notes and TIF bonds.
Yeah.
They've used the bond money to basically do sort of area-wide infrastructure, and they've pledged certain, I mentioned the RPAs, the subphases, certain subphases of Cortex. Those RPAs are pledged to different series of TIF bonds.
Mark, I have a question about going back to the but-for test.
Yeah,
When we apply the but-for test, we're applying that based on the project as presented to the commission. It's not necessarily that the project writ large could not have been developed but for the TIF. It's as presented. So if there are improvements that are taken away or proposed improvements that are taken away from the project that reduce the overall cost, the project could theoretically sustain itself and it does not need the TIF. Is that a fair characterization?
well, I think it's more nuanced than that. I think typically, yes, you are supposed to review the project that's been presented to you.
Right.
And hypothetically, maybe there is a project that has too many bells and whistles that could be removed and still be viable. In practice, what we usually see is when you remove elements, you reduce revenues and you're not really solving the problem.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
But there is also sometimes the element of I call it the physical infrastructure, which is often the responsibility of the municipality. And so when we have infrastructure improvements that are included in the project area, that is a win for the municipality in the sense that it is work that will get done in this project that otherwise would need to be allocated from the city's fund of some kind.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, often on the initial, when early discussions occur on these projects, often there's like, hey, if you want to do this project, you're going to have to improve this road so there's adequate infrastructure to get to and from your project. You've got to, put in sidewalks, street lighting, things like that. Those things all cost money.
That be part of the blighting study?
Often you'll see in a blighting study if there's inadequate public infrastructure or deteriorated public infrastructure, that will be noted, yeah. Any other questions on those before we move on? So going next level of detail, we've got the chart here on pilots. Again, these are the property taxes. As the chart shows, you've got a base year value. That's that sort of purple rectangle. Taxing districts continue to receive their base year values throughout the life of the TIF. The TIF can be up to 23 years. As we would expect, assessed value and property taxes to increase during the life of the TIF. That increase is what we call pilots. That's that kind of pale yellow triangle. And then at the very right, you'll see a darker yellow shape. And that is sort of after the TIF expires, the taxing districts get the full benefit of the now increased tax base. And not all property taxes are included in these pilots. City, school district, community college, a lot of those are included. What is excluded is Missouri blind pension, sheltered workshop, commercial surcharge, personal property taxes are not affected. And then if a future voter approved tax increase occurs, the TIF doesn't get the windfall of that future voter approved increase. That the TIF was underwritten without knowing there would be an increase, so they don't get the benefit of it. And then not necessarily applicable to the city of St. Louis, but if you were in the county or other parts of the state and you had a fire district or an ambulance district, those would also be excluded.
So like state sales taxes are totally out here.
Yeah, and I'll get, so on the east side.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I believe the sales tax rate in the city of St. Louis is like 9.68 or 9.69%.
It's 10%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Call it that.
Yeah. The portion of the sales tax.
Played yesterday for $100. It's 30.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. The portion of the sales tax that's actually subject to TIF in the city of St. Louis is about 3.1%. So the difference between 9.7 and 3.1, that is your state sales tax. That's your public transit tax. That's your economic development sales tax. St. Louis Public Schools has a desegregation sales tax. Those things are all excluded from TIF. So there are taxing districts, including the city, including the school district, that when you do have a TIF project that generates a lot of sales tax, will continue to receive quite a bit of sales tax money.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Going back to pilots. So the base AV is always going back into the original coffer. So an example would be any incremental AV increase would go toward the project, but that purple base would stay.
Would stay with the taxing districts, yeah. Yep, so they would never have a lower amount, yeah. And the same concept happens on EATS, but the other wrinkle on the EATS is that the TIF only captures 50%. So those taxing districts are getting their base year values and they're getting 50% of the increment. So the role of the TIF Commission under statute says that the TIF Commission shall vote on all proposed redevelopment plans, projects, and designations of redevelopment areas and amendments thereto within 30 days following the completion of a hearing. So you will hold a public hearing. And then you'll make recommendations to the governing body, which is, in this case, the Board of Aldermen, within 90 days of that hearing. Those are your only two statutory responsibilities. Hold a hearing, make a recommendation. That recommendation can be for or against. You're expected to vote your conscience. We do, for those of you who've been on the TIF Commission previously, with respect to Cortex, we have by contract imposed a additional responsibility on the TIF Commission to review sort of detailed project proposals for sub projects within certain RPAs. Those will come up from time to time, but that is a responsibility that we've imposed in an agreement, well, via contract, not via statute. So when we're approving a TIF commission or a TIF project, how does it all happen? First of all, developer applies to SLDC. There's a lot of application vetting to go on. There's developer has to provide a lot of information regarding the project, a lot of financial information, a lot of financial review by SLDC, sort of a lot of due diligence and background checking. Also, SLDC will do its own investigation regarding the but-for, make sure that, looking at market cap rates and estimated rate of returns, that this is in fact a project that would not reasonably be anticipated to occur without tax increment financing. Once we get through the vetting process, SLDC will send out notices to convene the TIF Commission. You guys, plus the representatives of the other taxing district, will meet. You'll hear a presentation from the developer and SLDC regarding the proposed plan and project and area, and you'll be asked to schedule a public hearing. By state law, we have to give out at least 45 days notice of that public hearing, so there's quite a gap in time for the public to become aware of the project. During that gap in time, redevelopment plans, blight studies, cost benefit analyses are all fine-tuned, T's crossed, I's dotted. And then we come back 45 days later, TIF Commission holds a public hearing. They receive comment from the public. They receive comment from the taxing districts. They receive a developer presentation. They ask the developer any remaining questions they have. And then at the close of the public hearing, either at that meeting or another meeting anytime within 90 days, the TIF Commission is tasked with making a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. Usually that recommendation is, we think it would be wise that the Board of Aldermen approve this, or we are not in favor of it.
Are there negotiations after the fact, the Board of Aldermen?
I'm going to get to that where you'll see it is in the redevelopment agreement, which is important for you to understand, but also outside of the TIF Commission's purview.
Is there an IGA involvement as well?
An IDA?
IGA.
I
Agreement. with school districts or anything?
The school district is typically not a party to a redevelopment agreement involving a TIF project.
But but the special, or the school district does participate because of the members of the commission.
Yeah, they have two members on this commission, yes. After the recommendation is made, approval of the TIF goes to the Board of Aldermen. If the TIF commission had voted in favor of the TIF project, it would be a simple majority approval at the Board of Aldermen. If the TIF commission recommended against the project and the plan, it would take a 2/3 supermajority to override the TIF commission's recommendation.
That's not double.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that was put in maybe about 8 or 9 years ago.
And the one point that I want to make sure everybody understands that, so when we call you and say we are convening the TIF commission, that is the very first meeting. We call it the preliminary hearing, where you're then going to determine whether you're going to have a public hearing. And so the second meeting is where, generally we get full press attendance, because at that point is where you will approve or recommend sending it to the Board of Aldermen.
So if we, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but if that first initial meeting, we did not approve a public hearing, that would stop process, am I right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And we have, it's been a while, but in instances, we've gotten to the public hearing stage and you've wanted more information, and we've continued the hearing to another date until you got that information. So those are all within your control. So I mentioned earlier, the redevelopment agreement. This is not a document that's reviewed by the TIF commission. This is a contract between city and developer in which the specific terms and conditions of implementing the redevelopment plan are laid out. This is a document that says you've got to complete it by such and such a date. If you do complete it by such and such a date, and you've maintained your property and you've done everything we've told you to do, you'll get your TIF note at the end.
Okay, so there are these peripheral issues that we deal with, such as minority contracting, trust housing fund. Is that captured in the redevelopment?
It is, yes.
Okay, negotiation. So really,
Yep.
those discussions are almost irrelevant at our point, right? That's just something that the city's going to negotiate.
That's right. And so let me get to the next slide here. And I work with TIF commissions all over the state. So the
Or your favorite, though, huh?
number one.
Good answer.
TIF commission is there to review TIF redevelopment plans. No one on the TIF commission, no single person, nor the commission as a whole is authorized to negotiate a deal separately from the city. That is, the redevelopment agreement is a responsibility for the city and the developer to negotiate. Additionally, the TIF commission is not the planning commission. The city has its own planning and zoning commission. Those items are in the purview of the actual planning commission. So what does it mean to be the TIF commission? How do you base your vote? Well, the TIF Act doesn't say that you can only consider A, B, or C. It's silent, so we take that as to mean consider what you want, vote your conscience. You're an individual human being, do what you think is best. But when you look at the TIF Act as a whole, what's sort of the overall purpose of the TIF commission? And that is to, in my mind, to vet whether this is a good public investment, whether the public benefit is outweighing the cost at the end. And that's why I think city is not the only public entity. That's why the school district members and those other taxing districts, I think, are included in the TIF commission.
But the issue of who the contractors will be, minority, women participation and so forth, has been something this commission has often considered and I
Yeah.
considered important. You're saying we don't have, that's not a particular authority that.
I mean, there are generally applicable city ordinances that govern how much MBE, WBE participation is required, prevailing wage is required by generally applicable city ordinance. Those items are incorporated into the redevelopment agreement. When you go to talk about specific, that there have been past commission meetings that I sat on where, folks had issues with certain general contractors versus others.
Right.
That is not laid out in statute. That to me seems a little extraneous for a commission to review, but again, the TIF Act is silent. It does not specify that you can only look at one or two
Right, but if
things.
the commissioner votes negative because if it's concerned about how minority hiring is going to happen,
Yeah,
that's still a negative vote, right?
correct.
Now, Mark, you mentioned that, the TIF Act is silent as to the factors that can or should be considered, but, you also mentioned that the commission is really doing this in when you look at the TIF Act as a whole, the commission is empowered to review these projects for the public benefit. And so in your view, is there I'm not going to say a duty because that word is a little bit too strong and carries a lot of baggage with it, but is there an obligation or responsibility for the TIF Commission to consider, well, in other words, the public benefit, however that may be construed? Is that your read?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there is no definition of public benefit that I can say objectively includes A, B, and C, right? I mean, it is a subjective test, but I think the only objective thing the TIF Commission should base its vote on is whether it's had enough information to make an informed decision. If you don't have enough information, you need to tell us so that we can get you that information. And then however you analyze it, however you view the public benefit, whether it's recognizing that the city and the area is going to benefit from a large public infrastructure investment, that this very dilapidated, blighted property is going to be rehabbed, that the taxing districts are going to come out with a much higher tax base at the end of the TIF. Those things are within your purview to analyze and weigh however you see fit.
What is the possibility of changing the share of the revenue that the school district would receive from a project? Is there any way to adjust that, or is that?
Under existing state law, and we've done this on a few TIF projects, you can declare a portion of a revenue stream as surplus. And the result of that is that it gets transferred back to the taxing districts for which it generated.
All of the taxing districts proportionately?
Correct. You can't single out the school district. You've got to share with everyone. And then we do have, the city was successful a few years ago in getting an amendment to the TIF Act that created the Strategic Growth for Infrastructure Fund, if I got that right, in which the city can take 10% of the TIF revenue stream and put it in this fund to use for infrastructure improvements in low-income census tracts. And so
Away from the project area.
Yeah, outside of the project area. And so we're implementing that for the first time with the most recent Cortex projects.
Mark, can you go over, I know it's not really on the TIF commission, but the redevelopment agreement, majority of it's a boilerplate for on most TIFs, but where we kind of get in the weeds on what type of project it is the clawbacks. Can you kind of go over the clawbacks?
Yeah, and I believe it's city ordinance now requires that there be a clawback mechanism within the redevelopment agreements. The city has typically, even before that ordinance went into effect, has included in its redevelopment agreements a calculation done at the completion of the project. It's done by the developer. It's sent over to SLDC for vetting. And it basically says, like, you provide the most up-to-date financial information available from the project, rent rolls, things like that. And if it comes out that you're, based on this new market data, you've exceeding a certain rate of return, then the amount of TIF will be reduced. If the TIF plan authorized 5 million and the end result of this calculation said only 4 million was needed, the redevelopment agreement limits the TIF to 4 million.
And that particular piece is not well known or understood. So just good information to have in the background. But a good point that you made is that even before the ordinance, we were doing the clawback.
Yep.
I didn't get what your exception was.
It was not an exception. I'm just saying that it is good to know that we are performing that and that happens or has happened throughout a number of years of our TIF.
And I am aware of it. I think at least one TIF in which the clawback did get triggered.
Also, if there was a major job employer, there's job requirements and they have to report those, and if those don't hit those
Yep.
marks, we can claw back the TIF.
Yeah, whatever unique aspect about the project, we can incorporate into that too.
I do have a question regarding the projections that we receive. Obviously, these are multi-year projections that span 20 plus years sometimes. Is there a requirement by the state or the city that after that time period has ended, that there is a review done just to see how accurate those projections were?
So every year through the life of the TIF, the city files a report with the state that lists the EATs and the pilots and any bonded indebtedness and the anticipated redevelopment project costs at the beginning, at the end, how long the life of the TIF was expected to occur, things like that. That document or that report is then compiled by the Department of Revenue from all TIF districts within the state. It's posted on their website. It's given to the General Assembly. Anyone would be able to go back and compare, look at that document and get the analysis they want. And then you'll also see during every 5 years, a TIF comes up for a hearing within the Board of Aldermen, and they evaluate the status of those TIFs. Now, those hearings aren't usually, there's information on revenues projected, but those hearings generally are a 5-10 minute thing. There's not a whole lot there.
Our hearings are February 3rd, if anybody would like to attend at the Board of Aldermen. So
The hearing this year is February 3rd. So the hearing that Mark is describing,
I see.
we will be doing it this year on February 3rd.
And is that an aldermanic committee hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, the HUD's committee.
Yes, before the HUD's committee.
And then it's on the slide here, but just as a note, as the commissioner mentioned, when we evaluate these TIF projects, we are estimating revenues 23 years in the future. That's, there's a margin of error there. Anything can happen during that time. COVID can happen, anything. Rampant inflation, it could, adjust the actual numbers significantly in ways that could not be anticipated as we sit here today. With that, I'm happy to answer any final questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to David Meyer, who's going to talk a little bit about the TIF Commission's bylaws and its organization.
Well, I have one question that I've wondered about. We've gone for a number of years without having TIFs, and now apparently we're looking at having them. I think in the intervening years, my assumption has been that a lot of has been done through support has been through tax abatement. Do you have any sense of why we've gone through these changes?
I think a successful TIF project is a bit of a unicorn. Just fundamentally, if you've got obviously there's been a lot of apartment development in the city, correct? That does not generate sales tax. That generates just property tax. Most of those apartment developments did not need 23 years of incentive. They were done with 10 years or less. that fits very nicely as an abatement tool.
But we did apartment buildings when we were doing TIFs years ago.
Years ago, yeah. And I think the market has realized that abatement is more efficient, better structured incentive for those type of developments. Same with industrial projects, like when we did the P&G expansion on the North Riverfront, abatement made more sense. TIF projects, what we usually see, there's got to be a critical mass of activity going on. It's got to be a larger project. It's got to have sales. It's got to have earnings tax. It's got to have those EATs being generated. If there's no EATs being generated, then you should probably just do abatement.
I think later on you will see where that bubble was, where we were doing single site, many of them in the past. I think what Mark is saying is that there's more decisions made about which tools to use. And I think with the fiscal analysis that we do now and understanding of that, we can make a better decision on which tool to use. And so you'll see that in the latter years, we didn't use TIF as frequently as we did in some of the earlier 2000s.
Well, I always think about that Mercedes-Benz building that we did. Where was that? Near 40 someplace.
Oh, Hampton.
Yeah, Hampton and 40. Yeah.
And that would probably not be a TIF in today's theory. Is that what you're saying? Because it is a single property kind of.
Well, it's difficult to say specifically on that one. It may not be the best example. I would tell you maybe it's one of the apartment buildings downtown that we did. That wouldn't be.
Yeah.
But on that particular one, there was a lot of infrastructure that was required, a garage and other things to make that site work. That probably would have caused us to maybe look at that one.
Including public infrastructure.
A lot of public infrastructure.
And there's sales from the services at the Mercedes-Benz that feeds into the TIF.
Right. Sales from cars are not captured, but sales from oil changes and.
But there are a lot of examples that we could use, and I just can't think of one specific one right now.
The Foundry's a great example of what we look at future TIFs to be in that ballpark, or heavy infrastructure, streetscapes, those type of things where we see the TIF commissions, what type of projects are being presented in front of you.
Other questions?
Okay,
Mark.
David?
All right, I'll stay here. Is Mike working? Can you all hear me online?
Yes.
I'm not sure that they can see you though, but just because you're you're off the screen.
So I'll just give a brief overview of some local color to this. In the city's code in chapter 3, there's actually enabling legislation that's codified there. When the city adopted the use of TIFs in 1991, it was done by ordinance. The ordinance that then created the existence of this commission had some specific provisions, which I think you are all probably very well aware of. One of them is that the appointments that you all have taken have to be approved by the Board of Aldermen. There's also some specific professional.
Pull your mic down, David.
Yeah, it does not, I have to hold it. There's also some specific professional requirements that need to be met by certain members, so that the board has the well-rounded status that's expected to provide the review of these types of projects. There's some terms that are set through there, although generally it does mimic the state law. And then this ordinance actually does adopt the state law and says that you have all the powers that the state law grants. There's another provision in chapter 3 of the city code referencing the planning commission, which Mark alluded to as well. The planning commission, which of course is a separate body that actually meets in this room as well, is given authority to review blighting and redevelopment plans to determine whether the plan is consistent with the city's other adopted plans, and may begin to undertake that practice going forward. I think historically they have not formally taken them up, but that is in the code as something that they have the authority to do. Another thing that the ordinance provides is for the authority to create bylaws. So bylaws were adopted by the commission, I'm sure far back at the beginning. The current iterations in the packet you were provided, which was adopted in 2010. They also, of course, track the statute and your statutory authority. It sets terms for your offices. I'll note that the members appointed by the school board and the taxing district have the authority to set their own terms. Those are not set by the city, and so they determine and generally serve at the pleasure of those appointing authorities. The mayoral appointees have specific terms set by the board. There is also in your bylaws quorum provisions, just general procedures. You've adopted, for the most part, Robert's rules to the extent that they're relevant. There's also offices and duties. Of course, you have a chair, a vice chair, secretary who's is in a position that's the same as the executive directors for practical purposes. And then also note that your conflict of interest provisions are located in the bylaws. So that's some local elements in addition to the state law that have been adopted over the 35 years of the existence of this board. Happy to answer any detailed questions, but again, those are materials that you should have and can refer to as you wish.
You've invited all the members of the commission. I don't remember ever being reappointed. What is the status?
I think that in recent years, I think you were one of the very longstanding members. I think in more recent years, members have actually been called to the HUD's committee. Maybe some of the
Yeah,
more recent
I mean,
appointees have.
in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
What, been,
Yeah, I had to go testify in front of a committee of the Board of Aldermen.
Yeah, I
I
believe
think
the
that's
Hudson
a new
committee, yeah.
practice.
so we're confident that all the members that we're dealing with now are fully instated?
Correct.
And I note, Article 2, Section 6, we receive no compensation.
That is very true. And I should note that to the extent,
Pay my parking and I'm happy.
I think your parking gets covered. Yeah, to the extent that terms may expire, you continue to serve until a replacement is appointed. So everybody is duly appointed and valid to serve.
Yeah, but it would be better for us to be,
Optimal, but not required.
Thank you, David. One real quick thing about policy. It's in the policy spelled out in our application that's online to the public. Anybody who can pull it up. Mark covered most of it. David covered some also. Just to rehash some of this. Eliminate of blight is a key. It's on page 6 of our application. But-for test. One thing we did not discuss is we like to see TIFs be 15% of the budget or no greater than that. If there is a greater piece of the budget of 15% has to be due to job creation or some significant cost component to infrastructure. So
that has happened. In previous steps, we've gone above 15%.
yes, but we had to explain why we would do that. That's on page 7, top of 7. And we also go into clawbacks and all those other things that we've discussed also. So please look that over. If anybody has any questions, please reach out to us.
But in terms of those deviations from policy or exceptions, that rests strictly with SLD staff when they get the application. Say somebody wants 18%, that's totally your call to get it to us.
And it's our responsibility to provide you with the
That's-
rationale for
right.
doing something different.
Yeah. Yes.
So we can be confident then if there are any exceptions to this, they have been presented to us then.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. The policy, of course, to the extent you said it, you have the extent to the discretion to
Yeah.
deviate from it as
The
well.
good news is we have a policy. The bad news is we have a policy.
Yes.
Yes. Now Madeline will speak on the past when the TIFs are approved and show you an example of one how they have expressed. She'll go over greater detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Hi, I'm Madeline Swanstrom. I'm the Incentive Compliance Manager at SLDC, and I'm going to share a little bit of the presentation that we do to the Board of Aldermen every year that's required by state statute. And we work closely with the comptroller's office with Sheba and Richard, who are here with us now. And they send us the reports for each TIF, and then we report to the state, and then we compile this for the Board of Aldermen. Okay, so just as an overview, 152 redevelopment plans have been established. 124, executed redevelopment agreements. Sometimes a TIF is passed, but it doesn't end up coming to fruition for whatever reason. We have 57 that are now retired or terminated. And then when we look at TIF projects, so that includes that includes PDAs. RPAs have PDAs attached to them, so parcel development agreements as well. So we said Cortex is broken down into RPAs, so it's Foundry, so that's what that includes. And most of them are substantially complete at this point. Next slide, please. Thanks. As you can see, we had a very prolific few years in the 2000s with TIFs, and it's dropped off quite a bit since then. And many of them are now retiring, paying off and retiring, or just getting to that 23 years and retiring. And so we're having fewer and fewer that we're reporting on every year, but it's still a substantial amount. I mean, it's a lot more than most municipalities have.
But this is a pictorial of what we were talking about, that bubble that we went through in the early 2000s. But this is also a good pictorial of how few we are doing in recent years. Okay.
Yes.
Ones that have reached maturity, I mean, have we had any failures?
Oh, yes. In fact, that's what she was talking about, numbers that were terminated because they were not functioning, or those that did not meet their financial goal, but all of them, when it gets to 23, are sunset.
Over, yeah. But do we have a sense, the terminated means before 23 years?
Yes, we terminated the TIF before 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
So can you go back one slide and maybe show that number again?
Yes, of how many we have retired and terminated. Terminated would be things that just never happened. Things like Skywheel was this, one example of a project, or we're looking to probably terminate Bottle District soon as another example. It just never happened. So it was all passed by the Board of Aldermen and, recommended by the TIF Commission, but it never became a project. And so then we had to terminate,
Correct.
or we'll terminate.
Yeah, and what we see is usually residential projects that are by themselves, single site residential projects not performing. So they usually are retired after 23 years by state law. So it's not because they're performing, it's because the clock has run out. So the stronger TIFs retire early because they're being paid off early.
So yeah, you can have stronger TIFs that are paid off before the
Yes.
sunshine.
Correct.
Yeah, so the great ones are those that will pay off between 7 and 15 years. So if we get those are great.
Yes, exactly. And we'll actually have an example of one of those later on in the PowerPoint. And then we'll go to the next slide, please. So this example that we're going to talk through today is Loughborough Commons, which was a $9 million TIF note. It was a $40 million project. And it was approved. It started in 2007. And it's 230,000 square feet of retail. There's a Schnucks and a Lowe's. It's off of Interstate 55. And it did pay off a few years early. It was dissolved by Ordinance 71784 on March 14th, 314 day, 2024. Next slide, please. So we did an analysis of how the economic benefit of Loughborough Commons during the TIF and even the year after, when after it had paid off, because technically it should have still been a TIF, or was projected to be, but it's adding even more economic benefit to the city now that the special allocation fund has been dissolved and it's been retired. And we highlighted the benefit to St. Louis Public Schools. As Mark mentioned, there's a 2/3 cent sales tax that's exempt from TIF. And so the schools are still saw an additional benefit all the way on the right, that last column of $6 million over from between 2007 and 2025 that they would not have seen without this TIF development. And of course, the state is exempt. The city still receives the commercial surcharge and a few other things as well. And so we're just showing that the TIF, even during the life of the TIF, the taxing districts are still seeing a benefit.
But let's not go past that one too fast because I really want everybody to see what the base is. So if we did nothing, you see what the TIF revenue, I mean, see what the tax revenue would be. But because of the investment of, because of this incentive, it was able to generate the additional revenue to the taxing districts and the city.
Yes, that's correct. So if the development had not happened, that's that second to last column. And so the taxing districts would have seen 32 million about in benefit. But with this TIF development, they saw an extra 63 million in benefit. And so that's just what this chart is showing.
Because my wife shops there.
Well, that makes it.
Yeah, believe me.
It's a popular spot. I mean, it did pay off early, so. And this is an example of a good use of TIF, as we were talking about. There are a lot of sales tax generated by this kind of development. Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Otis, was that all infrastructure costs, public infrastructure for that?
The-
You know?
Probably not 100%, but as you can, if you visited that site, you can see that there was, with the parking lot, the entryway into it, with the roads that are there, and all of the drainage and other things that are there. So all of that is part of that cost. But I'm sure there was some of the cost was in getting the foundations and other things that are in there. Okay, but for the most part, it is about public infrastructure.
I also just wanted to explain, I think I neglected to mention that a lot of that economic benefit is from that 50% of EATs that still goes to the taxing districts. So that's what a lot of that benefit is as well.
Hey, let me ask you, because you see all of the numbers on these projects, are there any that you can think of off the top of your head that did not produce the expected revenue and so the developer had to step in? Is that has happened?
That has happened. That happens frequently, especially with it does because especially with the TIFs on residential, like
Yeah.
there was a lot of loft development on Washington Avenue in downtown, and TIF was used a lot, and those notes have not performed to what the initial expectation was. Some of that has to do with the assessed value not increasing in the same way that they thought it would, so the
Developer bears the brunt of that though, right?
whoever holds the note,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
that's right. So sometimes it's the developer, or sometimes I think they'll sell it off to someone else. But yes, the holder of the note does benefits less. But also, if it's the developer who holds the note, they're also paying less in taxes, in property taxes. But it's true, they're not benefiting. The assessed value is not going up, and so that's not good for the overall project.
Are there examples that you know of where the project has, substantially, call it 40-50% started and it just never came to fruition? Have we had that happen?
Yes, I think, Zach, can you think of any examples specifically with that? I mean, sometimes they will be started but not completed. I can't think of one off the top of my
No,
head.
I can't think of one either. Usually it happens or it doesn't happen. Unless there's Cortex has certain RPAs that probably will never start or have a project in them, but I can't think of one that,
Oh, that's good news.
yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you.
But those RPAs are running out of time, right?
Yeah, they've all started. Certain RPAs, I don't believe will have a project in them. But the clock's ticking, so.
Right.
I just like to point out in your packet, there's what goes in front of the Board of Aldermen on February 3rd is the annual report. It's a spreadsheet, singles page. That's what the Board of Aldermen will see, and it'll be advertised in the paper. Just kind of goes over what Madeline just went through. But if you have any questions on any of the material that has been presented to you, please reach out to us.
Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, good presentation. Are there any upcoming TIF proposals that we can anticipate?
Well, we don't have them firm, but we are having discussions out there with some who are thinking about it, but until they actually come and we are sure, we aren't divulging that just yet. But we will make sure that you, obviously, the reason we're having this, because we anticipate potentially calling a meeting sometime within the next quarter. And so, but when we finally get something firm, and we will then be making sure everyone is aware.
Thank you.
Yeah, good presentation. Thank you so much for that information.
Okay, good. The goal here was to just make sure everyone understood I call it the process, but then second, the theory that we do in fact look at that but-for situation, and that we bring it to you if it is a benefit to the taxing districts, and particularly the city. And we have the ability now to really look at it through a fiscal lens, but we also have the economic benefit scorecard and companion with this. And so we feel very comfortable that if we do go through the analysis and determine that it is a good project, that is a good benefit to the city, that that those are the ones that we'll be bringing, and then you all can determine and evaluate based on the merit of that project. But and that philosophy, I think, is such that we don't have as many as we used to. And and having been here when we were rolling them through on a very frequent basis, it was such a period of time where there was nothing really happening in the city. It was really to try and launch a lot of activity, which we did. And in fact, in the entirety of Washington Avenue actually got done. And I just remember arriving here in 1998 and being able to go out on Washington Avenue after 9 and not see anybody. In fact, I could pick up a rock and throw it down the middle of the street and not hit anything. That was after 9 o'clock. So between 7:30 and 9 on Washington Avenue, but prior to 2000, you could do almost anything you wanted to. You could lay down in the street. So the use of the tool was to really try to kickstart, which it did. So I think we turned that corner, and I think we have determined that there are other tools that can be used. But we also recognize that there's this issue of trying to attract developers, redevelopers, and those to reinvest in their properties. And unfortunately for us, it's that rate of return and the ability to include financial institutions, banks, and those that would invest or finance. And so we have to convince them that they can get a return on their investment. That's it.
So is there any further comments or questions that we want to address today? Hearing none, then I guess we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.